I lost my unit of 4. I lost my parents being happy. My parents lost their daughter, their first child. I think about her being my maid of honor. I think about me not being an aunt to her kids. It's all these things all the time. You're not just grieving your sister. You're grieving your entire life.
Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. In today's episode, we have a deeply personal one-on-one conversation with Sophia Allen, following last month's powerful roundtable discussion about the loss of her sister, Olivia Allen. In that episode, we heard not only from Sophia, but from Olivia's mother, Melissa, and her best friend, Aubrey. They shared their grief after Olivia's battle with leukemia ended just about a year ago and left behind a devastated family and community. This episode, however, offers a deeply personal look through Sophia's eyes, her reflections on sibling loss, the profound shifts she's experienced in family dynamics, and the things she wishes others would understand or do differently when dealing with such heartbreaking loss. It's a raw and honest conversation that explores the life we live after losing those we love most, and it offers insights into the unspoken challenges. Thank you for listening to this poignant, heartfelt episode. So today I am sitting here with Sophia Allen, who was a previous guest on A Place of Yes. So we're here to talk about your sister, Olivia Allen. And for those in my audience who don't know who Liv was, she passed away almost a year ago. And actually, when this episode comes out, it's going to be just around the 1 year mark. And she was 18 when she passed. And she was diagnosed with leukemia when she was 17.
Yes.
And passed away March 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to invite you back to talk more. So thank you for coming back.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm Sophia Allen. I'm a junior in high school, and my sister passed away in the middle of my sophomore year, which was definitely challenging. My sister and I were best friends. We did everything with each other, even though we were 2.5 years apart. We both played field hockey, and her friends were my friends. She always was with my friends. We were together constantly.
And one of the things that I have thought about a lot, like with you, a lot through this podcast, is just this idea about how siblings are so often overlooked in grief. It's almost like I'm trying to undo some of the wrongs that I did when Jake passed away. I thought about Ethan as part of our family, but I didn't necessarily think about him losing his brother. And I feel so kind of guilty about that. Sibling loss is a huge loss. So often the focus is on parental loss, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that, what it feels like to lose your sibling, and as you said, your best friend. Can you talk a little bit about what that feels like?
So I would say the focusing on the parents part, that was not an issue, but it really stood out to me even during the treatment. Immediately after she was diagnosed, I came to school and it was, how's your mom doing? How's your sister doing? Although I would love to tell everyone how they're doing, it was never a good answer, first of all. And second of all, I'm standing right there, going to school, taking hard classes. How am I doing? And it's I know they don't mean it, but it's too awkward for them to ask how I'm doing. So they just automatically jump to my mom and my sister.
Do you think that's what it is? Because do you think that they just were scared to ask you?
I hope. They're scared. But I don't know. I think it really depends on the person, too. Some people are it's fine. I'm distracted. Well, my sister's the one going through it. And I think that could also be a big factor, that I'm not the one who's getting treatment and I'm not the one who has to stay in the hospital. So maybe that's where it got overlooked. But even when she passed away, it was, oh, when's your mom coming back to work? How is she doing? And it was just do you not see that I'm standing right here? And if they ever did ask if I was okay, it was very they didn't want a full response. They want, I'm good.
That's a really interesting point, right? Because it's like a double-edged sword. Sometimes when people finally ask, you don't always feel comfortable really answering.
Yeah.
So let's start sort of at the beginning, because I think that's important that you brought that up. So she was diagnosed in June?
Yes.
What was that? I mean, that must have just been so heavy, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the fact that all of the questions, right, are how's your mom and how are you? Did you at that time, and this is a hard question, but did you feel resentful of that? Like, did you feel like what were your feelings then? Because you must have been a lot of different things.
I don't know if ebbed and flowed would be the right word, but it depended on my mental health status. At the beginning, I feel like I was a little selfless. I was trying to protect my sister and my mom. So I didn't care that people weren't asking about me. But I would say into the journey when my dad and I were just at home while my sister and my mom every other week were going into the hospital, I was mad and I was angry. And it definitely, my mood was 100% different, angry. I would
snappy.
Yeah, snap at people. And it really just depended on the week and how I was feeling.
Angry at the situation, angry at the world, angry at everything.
Everything. Yeah, you don't understand it till you're in it, but this is a constant conversation in my house. You can't be mad at anyone. You can't be mad at the doctors. You can't be mad at your friends. You can't really be mad at God. They tell you not to blame God. Who are you going to be mad at? You end up lashing out on people because there's no one to be mad at.
You are so right on the money, right? Because I wish this stupid cliche of time heals all wounds was actually true. Because I wish I could have you look ahead and be and yes, it's different, right? It feels different after time. But all these years later, I still sometimes feel that. It would be so much easier if you could just blame one person. So you're right. It's hard to sometimes, you've got this big emotion, but nowhere to put it.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about what that was like. So you were a freshman when she got sick?
Mm-hmm.
So freshman and then into, so when she was in and out of the hospital, and you said your mom would always be, was she always the one that went with her?
Yeah.
100% of the time?
Yeah.
So you were home alone with your dad. What was that like?
It was weird. I don't want to say single parent, but I remember making that remark it's I have a single dad. And I'm so grateful. I had so many people to help me out that would make my school lunches. But me and my sister depended on my mom a lot. She did my laundry, cooked our meals. I wouldn't say that. My aunt would cook our meals, but she would make my lunch every morning. So it was definitely a big adjustment. When she was diagnosed, we were about to go into Regents Week for school.
Okay.
So it wasn't I was missing out on that mom experience too much, but it definitely got worse going into my sophomore year. My dad and I were very close, but nothing compares to your mom and being a girl. There's things you don't talk about with your dad.
So you missed your mom?
Yeah.
Were you ever mad at that?
I think so. And I think my mom would say that too. I was mad. And when she would leave, I would cry and I'd be angry and I didn't want to talk to them. But a part of me also was this is for the best. How would I feel if I had to go to the hospital with my dad? How would I feel? Being in the hospital and there's things especially as a girl that you don't want your dad to see. So obviously my sister and my mom went to the hospital. It was just so much time.
It's so much time. It's interesting because even though I know that you and I are having this conversation and I'm so, like I said earlier, trying to be so cognizant of the sibling, you just gave a very concrete example, right? Of things that people don't think about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because in that moment, everyone is focused on how is Liv doing? Mm-hmm. Is she going to be okay? What is the treatment? No one means it bad, but that there's not that follow-up question. Mm-hmm. How is Sophia doing? How is she handling it? I just want to take a minute to commend you for how well you did and ask you sort of directly, how are you now? How do you feel as you talk about this and don't talk about it and think about it? How do you feel right now?
I feel proud of myself because I'm a junior in high school and I think about going into college and planning the rest of my life and how I think I will be okay in life because I've had to be so resilient when she was diagnosed. I had Regents to take in a week. When she passed away, I had to study for AP exams. I've always had to move forward. I didn't have an option. So I feel proud of myself. I know I can literally get through anything I want. I'm not saying I won't cry, but I definitely can get through anything, I think.
Because I think there's two things that could have happened in a situation like that, right? You could have said, screw the Regents, I'm not taking them.
Yeah.
Or I'll take this AP exam another time. Was that ever an option for you, or were you like, no, I'm just going to handle this?
No, and I think that's also like I'm a very like obsessive person, and I always want to try my best. I don't think I could ever be like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's just not me.
Not who you are.
Other people can do that, and that's totally okay. Like, you deserve to in that situation. Like, to me, it felt like the only person I'm hurting is myself. So I just got through it. I look at those scores, and I'm like, they weren't great, but I'm not going to, like, put myself down about it.
Yeah.
I'm, like, almost nervous about this end of the year. No, I don't think anything bad could happen, but every time I have, like, these important dates, important tests, like, I always seem to have something bad. Like, your sister gets diagnosed with cancer the week before these big tests, and they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But then my sister passed away, and I'm like, oh my God, I have tests that are really important to me. I just feel about them, but...
Well, it's like you associate one with the other almost. I feel like that is a really common grief thing. Like, and I don't know if you think about it, like it's a little bit of a different example, but like for a long time after Jake died, you know, first it was like he died on a Wednesday. Like for a while I was like, something's going to happen on this day. Like there's just these, like you build these scenarios sometimes in your head. Are you nervous that, so you had a horrible thing happen freshman year, I had a horrible thing happen sophomore year?
Like I wouldn't put it past
life, right?
Yeah. And that's a terrible way to think, and it's very scary, but I do think like something could happen. Like I have a test coming up, and it makes me very anxious, but it's also like I don't know how to like deal with that, so I just try to keep going.
No, it's hard. It's hard to like make sense of some of these things, right? And even if you step away sometimes and say like something bad is not going to happen every time I take a test.
Yeah.
Like the practical or like the smart girl in there is like, but that doesn't make sense sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? Like the emotion can overrun. One of the things that you sort of touched on a little bit, and you talked about like kind of being alone with your dad and missing your mom and all of those things. And so I think it's hard every time they left, I would imagine, because you would just like, but was it hard when they came back to acclimate again too, or? So
in the beginning of the school year, so September 2023, my mom and my sister would like come back every week, and that wasn't weird.
Okay.
It was fine, but once it got to her like inpatient stay where she never came home, which was in January.
She never came back?
No.
Okay.
So once she relapsed and then tried to like prepare her body for the bone marrow transplant, I don't even know if I'm saying the right things, she never came back home. And I think my mom maybe came home 3-4 times. I don't really remember, but it was weird. She would come home on like Sundays as like a reset and like help me get my like crap together. It was terrible because I knew she was homesick, but she was at home. But like her home was
at the hospital.
And that's like a weird feeling for a teenage girl.
Did you feel, and you don't have to answer this if this is too much, but did you feel like abandoned? Like, did you feel like they were choosing Liv over you? And I know that's a loaded question because obviously, given the circumstance, but like I sometimes worry that Ethan has that in his head. That's like even now that Jake's been gone so long, that it's still all of the stuff that I do for Jake. You know what I mean? I sometimes feel like there's this competition, or not competition, but comparison.
I felt abandoned, and there was one moment where I definitely felt like that, and it was in October 2023, where I got pulled up to varsity for field hockey, and...
As a sophomore?
Yeah. There was a game that I played in, which I didn't expect to play, and I can't remember if my dad was there, but I know my mom wasn't and my sister wasn't, and that was, like, soul-crushing. I came home and I cried and I was mad. But other than that, like, not really, because I think I was mature enough to realize, like, that was for the best. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't mad or angry from time to time.
And probably sometimes just sad, right?
Yeah.
I got really hung up after Jake died that, like, my family of 4 went to this family of 3. And I got, like, really wrapped up in this fact that, like, 25%, which is kind of a high percentage of my family was gone. Like, it just, I think of that sort of in terms of you guys, too. Yeah. And but at the end of the day, you went from having a sister to being essentially an only child. And how does that feel?
I've thought about that. And are you an only child?
I'm an only child.
A lot of people talk about how there's, like, only child characteristics.
Yeah.
And I never had those because I always had my sister. When I think about those type of situations, I'm like, no, I have a sister. Like, that's not me. But then, like, people are talking about their siblings, and it's like, I don't know where I, like, stand anymore. I don't feel like I'm an only child, but I also don't have a sister who's like living in like the present and the future. I feel like it's just this like situation based.
I get that. You don't know what to say. You don't know. You don't associate as an only, but you're also, it's hard to answer.
It comes up a lot. But I don't know. I could go into like eating dinner as a family, like the pictures. It's just like weird, like someone's missing at that table.
Do you mean like random Monday night dinner? Like and you feel like, do you think all three of you feel it?
I'm sure. There's just this absence that's there. Like on New Year's Eve when we were out eating dinner in Florida, like I felt the absence, and I know my parents did. It's one thing like living your whole life like that, and then you could have your sibling forever and you can have that situation, but there's like this weird feeling of not having your sibling at such a young age, and it's always there like reminding you. Family photos. You don't think about taking a single photo, but there it is, like you're missing 25% of the photo. So when I post on social media, like my sister all the time, it's gut-wrenching when it reminds me I'm never going to have another picture of my sister again. And it's, again, like something that no normal person would ever think about, but then you're in it and you're looking, and it's like, I'm not the person I was in 9th grade when we had our last normal, like, car selfie. That's all I have of her. Like, have grown up so much since what I would consider our last normal year was my eighth grade and her junior year of high school. And I look at those photos, I'm like, that's not me and that's not her, but that's all I really have. And then I think if my life lasts as long as I hope it does, like I'm never going to have another photo again. It sucks, and it also is like, I don't have anything to share. Like, I feel like I'm losing things to share about my sister because how many like photos can you post and how many times
at a certain point you're going to repeat them.
Yeah.
Do you remember you mentioned like the last car selfie? Like, do you remember what the last one was, or did you just do them all the time and not?
We did them all the time. Yeah. I mean, I remember our last picture in the hospital, but it's hard for me to remember like what I would consider like our last normal couple days before like she was diagnosed.
When life is normal, you don't remember every conversation, you don't remember every moment. And then I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand either, is because when something like this happens, it changes you forever. I think there's two things, right? Like it makes you appreciate that moment, but it can also make you so scared that it's the last moment. So like you just see the world differently, I think, when you've had this loss. And I don't think people understand that, because you'd probably give $1 zillion if you could remember those days before she got sick, right? But of course you can't, because they were just days then.
Well, we would fight a lot in the mornings, like as siblings fight. We were never like crazy, but we would fight because I would make her late to school. And I miss that. I'm so like jealous of people who get to like fight with their siblings. The highlight of my 9th grade year of high school was Liv and I bickering because I wanted Starbucks and she wanted Dunkin'. And like that's what I remember. And it's like, I wish I could grow up and be like, oh, I remember her helping me put on my wedding dress. And I'm just going to remember like our car rides, which I'm going to cherish forever. But
so she drove you to school freshman year?
Yeah.
What was her go-to Dunkin' Donuts?
The strawberry dragon fruit refresher.
Do you ever get those?
All the time. I didn't like it until she introduced me.
Are there other things like that you do now? Sort of like, not to honor her, because that's like, it's just a Dunkin' Donuts drink, but like that you do because of her or in honor or memory or like whatever of her? There's
like certain songs I'll play while I'm driving that remind me of her. When she dated this one boy, she loved rap music. I think one of the songs is called Life Goes On, and I'll play it, and like me and my best friend will be like, oh, Liv, like she's here with us.
How do you feel like your parents are doing? Like, do you worry about them?
Yeah, I do worry about my mom and my dad. My mom is definitely more, like, you can see it. Whereas my dad, he works a lot, like, he's on the road a lot. So I, to be honest, haven't seen, like, everything he's, like, feeling. My dad likes to go down memory lane on photos. It kills me, and I know he needs that time to, like, feel the feels. But I watch him, like, scroll through the photos and I want to like cry for him. He doesn't go to therapy. I don't know if he doesn't want to or just doesn't feel like ready, but he's got to do what he has to do. It's hard watching your parents go through that. Did they die? No, but it feels like I'm grieving them too. Like my life is not the same for so many reasons. Knowing my parents will never really be truly like happy again. And like maybe they will be, but from what I've seen, like there's going to be so many sad days. As like a 16-year-old girl, I just like feel stuck because I can't help them. My mom, I do feel good that she's like going to therapy a lot and she's in multiple different like grief groups. It's frightening for like a kid to watch your parents feel the way they feel.
You almost left me speechless because that's so, like, as a mom, I think about that. It's twofold, right? Like, of course, they are devastated because Liv is gone and they have to acclimate to this life without it. But there's this other piece. It's almost like you must want to sort of be like, but hey, guys, I'm right here.
And my parents have been very good about it. There is some, like, survivor's guilt to it. It's not like it was, like, a car crash where we both are sick, but I'm the sister who's alive, and, like, it's weird thinking about going to college and she didn't get to go to college. It's weird, like, I'm driving her car and that's her car. I'm wearing her clothes. Everyone's thinking about it, but, like, no one wants to say anything. There's nothing really to fix the situation, and everyone in my family has their, like, moments.
Yeah. So you're driving the car that was Liv's and you wear her clothes. Like, does that make you feel closer? Or does it weird you out? Or do you, like, where like, depends on the day?
Yesterday, I went into her closet and I was about to put on her shirt and I saw hair on the shirt and I was like I didn't think anything of it. I was like, why would there be hair on this shirt? It hasn't been worn. And then as I'm wiping it off, I'm realizing that's my sister's hair that fell out because of the chemo. And I stopped wiping it and I put the shirt back. I thought about it like for the rest of the day. But it feels good, but it also feels bad.
So is her room set up like as her room?
Yeah. Liv was gone for 50, 60 days, so her room wasn't exactly it's not like she just suddenly died.
Yeah.
So her room was clean.
Was her room always clean if she was at home?
No. It was clean because my mom would come home on Sundays and fold the bed. Like I destroy it now being in there. I'm like pulling out all the clothes. It pretty much looks exactly the same. We did have to like clean some things out. Some people, when they lose a child, they just leave everything as it is and shut the door. I wouldn't say that. Like, I've slept in her room since she's passed. It's not a weird feeling being in her room. It's different because she wasn't at home when she died.
I can see how sometimes, like, it might be nice to go in there. Yeah. It might be nice to be like, hey, I'm going to wear this shirt, like feel connected or something. I want to go back to what you said because I thought this was really kind of profound. When you said, you know, I'm grieving like my parents, like the family that I had before. And that's much more than just grieving the loss of Liv, right? That's like grieving the whole family unit.
I like look at social media a lot to see how I'm like feeling about certain things. And they do talk about parents and how a lot of siblings feel like they're never going to make their parents fulfilled. Yeah. And you can't. And that's like something I've had to learn to accept, and I still need like time accepting that. Liv is always going to be there, but like isn't here. I just wish I could help my parents, but there's nothing you can do. Like, we are all sad. We all want her back. And that's the thing. Like, my house isn't full of unhappiness, but there's sadness. I don't like that at all. But there's nothing you can do. I lost my, like, unit of 4. I lost, like, my parents, like, being happy. My parents lost their daughter, their first child. Like, I think about her being, like, my maid of honor. I think about, like, me not being an aunt to her kids. It's all these things all the time, like, that you're not just grieving your sister. You're grieving your entire life. Everything is different. Too. Yeah.
And I say this as a mom who's lost a child and has a living child. I totally, like, what you just said kind of stung a little bit because that feeling, and I think Ethan has this feeling, but that feeling that you will never fulfill them. I can tell you, like, I feel like I'm talking to Ethan now, so like now I'm having a moment, so I'm being a weirdo. But 100% he can, like, it's not true. Like, yes, I was supposed to be a mom of 2, but Ethan so fulfills me, right? Like, he just does. Like, he is enough. Yeah. Like, he is more than enough. Like, he is everything he needs to be without even doing any of it. So I would say that both your mom and dad feel that. They may not be able to articulate that yet, or they may not be able to make you feel that or show you yet. But I would say have faith because that is true. I want you to know, even if you don't know it yet, that you are totally fulfilling them and enough. Yeah. Like, just, it's true.
And I know it. I do. And, like everyone can tell you that.
Yeah. But
it's just weird.
Of course it is. 100%
Yeah.
it is.
And like my dad treated my sister and I, more my sister, like we were boys, like putting us on snowmobiles. And my sister learned how to change a tire. I haven't learned that yet. So you can see it's a little different between the two of us. But my dad and her, they had their things. And my mom and my sister were like this. And not that me and my mom aren't, but there's that feeling like they were close. have always been more like independent, but that's the other like sucky feeling is like they were like best friends. And I'm not trying to say that my mom and I aren't. It makes me feel bad. I'm like, both my parents lost that with my sister, and I'm not trying to replace it. They don't want me to replace it, but it's there. That feeling that my sister would work for my dad and like drive the cars he needed to be driven. And my sister probably called my mom every waking moment she could. That's also something I see them like missing out on. As a sibling who survived, you definitely think about what your parents are missing out on.
And it's not stuff that you can just start doing.
Yeah.
It's not what you did. Talk to me a little bit, if you're comfortable, about Liv went to the hospital in January and never came back. I remember from, way on the outside as this was sort of unfolding, I guess the thought in town was that she was going to be okay.
But yeah, I think everyone thought that.
Even when there was that stretch where things weren't quite going right, like you still thought it was going to come out like differently. I don't know. During that time, were you like, oh my God, my sister's dying? Or were you kind of also like, I think she's going to be okay?
I think I said this on the other podcast, but only one person has ever told me, like, there was a chance of her dying. But I never thought that way. And it literally took me until my sister's friends flew home from college and my family, who I haven't seen in months, it took all of them coming for me to realize, like, she's dying.
And that was in March, right?
Yeah.
That was early March.
When she was getting worse, I, like, stopped going to the hospital. Not, like, fully, but it was really, like, affecting my mood. Like, the hospital's not a fun place. I had a lot of work to do, and it just made me unhappy and stressed, and it was hard seeing her that way. But then my mom stopped telling me to come. She was getting worse, but I didn't know that. I'm sure you probably saw the GoFundMe. It's like, It would be updated on there and on the Facebook too. And I'd be like, that happened? And it pissed me off that I didn't know like certain things.
Like, or that you found it out on that GoFundMe or something.
Yeah. I was just in that much denial. But when Liv got the results back and there was nothing else working, I'm not sure what was in my head that made me think like everything was still okay. Aubrey and I slept over at her house and she was crying and I was like, it's fine. Like, don't worry. She'll be okay. I'm literally sleeping over at my sister's best friend's house and I'm telling her it's okay. She's going to be fine. And then I came back to the hospital that morning. She had the oxygen in her nose. And then I walk into the waiting room and there's my entire family. And I was like, oh.
Is that did you have I
don't know if you've been to Albany Med in a while, but there's this long hallway with a window and 2 couches. And I thought that Aubrey was in as much denial as me. And I called her out and I was like, I think we need to have a real conversation about Liv and I don't think she's doing okay. And she knew. And I didn't think she knew and she didn't think I knew, but I was telling her and she was trying to protect me. And it was it seemed that I was going back and forth between thinking she was going to die and not thinking she was going to die. But when I really realized, I sat in this window for I don't know how long, and I was just like, oh God, I don't know what the rest of my life looks like. And I had this conversation with Aubrey and her mom and my mom, and I was like, I'm about to lose my sister, the person you don't ever expect to lose. You expect to lose your parents. I thought at least that I would be in an old home with my sister when I was 90. That's just what I expected. I just sat in that window for hours and I just thought about that. And I didn't know she was so sick for the whole month of February and March that it took so much for me to realize that was the direction it was going.
Do you wish you knew more? Like, would you have done things differently, or are you comfortable with how it played out?
I think it would have been really hard to see her. When I used to think of my sister, I didn't think of her as, like, the girl with cancer. And I don't think anyone else really did either, because she didn't make it her personality. Like, you know, she was doing flips and working and going to college. But from what I've heard and what I saw in the last week, her body was, like, bruised and she could barely, like, walk to the bathroom. She wasn't eating. She looked like she was going to die. Part of me wishes I was there, but the other part of me is like, I don't want to remember that. Yeah. I do feel very guilty about not going as much. The way she looked, even in that last week, was, like, traumatizing enough. And the way my parents made it sound is, like, it wasn't that bad, obviously, but it was very bad. My mom was protecting me by not telling me everything. If I knew would I have been there, yeah.
When you were here last time, and I might say this wrong, so correct me if I screw this up, but you said something like Liv towards the end said to you, take care of Mom?
Well, I said it. It felt like the longest week of my life.
Were you in school back and forth, or were you just there?
I was just there.
Okay.
So, like, the timeline, I guess, is, I think it was a Thursday. I drove home from school. I drove home. My dad brought us to the hospital. Boom, bad news. And then the weekend came. My whole family was there. And then we had, like, that week to, like, be with her. It felt like the longest week of my life. And just sitting there watching her was really hard for me.
Could she talk? Like, were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was making jokes up until they, like, raised, like, the morphine way too high. The day before she died, she was sleeping a lot, but she did talk a little. What I would do, and my family didn't do this, but Starbucks and Panera are right under the hospital. I would go there for, like, a couple of hours. I would sit there, and because I could not be in that room for that long. And so then I finally talked to this one hospice nurse who was really close with my mom. I was looking for, like, a timeline. Not that I wanted her to die, but watching her was terrible. Yep. And so she said something like she's not going to pass away till she thinks, like, you guys are going to be okay, or, like, she's going to be ready. I was like, what would keep my sister alive? This is going to make me probably cry. The only thing I could think of is my mom. My sister was really worried about my mom all the time. So after that conversation, we were in the clinic. I walked back through the hospital. And I was like, can I, like, just talk to my sister alone? She was out of it at that point. But I told her, I was like, I've got Mom. Don't worry about her. I thought if there was something she needed to hear, it was going to be that. My mom was the thing that mattered to her most. My mom's health is not amazing. And that was always what she was worried about. So I remember, like, getting on my knees, like, next to her hospital bed and just being like, I've got Mom. I said that multiple times. She didn't all of a sudden, like, die. Like, there was still a couple days. But I had, like, another conversation with her alone, and I was like, don't worry about us. Like, we will be okay. Like, I've got Mom and Dad. At some point, we will be okay again. And then when she died, I had another moment alone where I was like, we will be okay. I will make sure Mom is taking her medicine and, like, going to the doctors and paying attention to herself. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I do believe, like, someone will not, it's not their time to go if they don't think everyone else is ready. And I think after being there for a week, like, what happened needed to happen. I think Liv knew what she needed to hear. Yeah.
Sophia, I mean, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is. I am of the thinking exactly that, right? Like, that when there's no other option, you have to give them what they need so that they can peacefully move on or pass on, or I don't even know how to say it, but I believe that. Yeah. Like, I think it's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful gift you gave your sister. Do you see it that way? Do you feel pressure by it? Like, do you, or both? I mean, I would imagine both.
Yeah. I mean, in therapy a lot, I talked at the beginning of therapy, I felt this, like, pressure to make sure my mom was okay. And, like, I do feel like there is times where I'm like, if I don't make sure my mom's okay, like, I'm letting my sister down.
So it's all connected.
Yeah. I know if my sister was, like, looking down, she would want me to make sure my mom's okay.
Yeah. Are you worried? I don't know if that's the right word. Are you thinking about, concerned, like, scared, any of these emotions? I'm not sure what the right one is, about the 1 year.
I'm scared to see how my parents will act. It's a Friday. I think I'm scared about, like, everyone else, too. I don't know, like, what I'm going to expect. I think that's going to be a lot. Like, I think my mom and I are planning, like, not going to school and doing something special, but I'm very, like, anxious about it.
These days are hard, and then I think people, even myself just asking the question even, right? Like, they put this, there's an added weight by it.
Yeah.
Like, people sometimes, but it's not going to be, whether you talk about it or not, it's just a hard day. But it's everyone else, like, the weirdness, right? Like, the tiptoeing, like, it's just, people are going to be weird.
I am very curious to see how people, like, I'm scared, but I'm curious. I've actually, except for, like, adults, I don't think I know a single person, unless I'm visibly crying, like, that has asked me if I'm okay. Like, I have to be, like, on the verge of a mental breakdown for anyone to ask if I'm okay. Yeah, I'm very interested to see what's going to happen.
One of the things that has come out of this podcast and these conversations is, I think it's this opportunity, right? Like, it's an opportunity for us to air our grievances, right?
Yeah.
Like these are the things that drive us nuts. I think it's almost like a service for anybody that's listening. Like, it's important for people to hear that. Like, and I think it's very important what you just said.
Yeah.
Unless I'm having a mental breakdown, no one asks me how I am.
Yeah.
People should check themselves a little bit, right? Like, because, hey, your sister died. It's worthy of being like, hey, Soph, you all right? It's worthy of that.
It's hard because I don't want to come on here and, like,
tell people what to do.
And, like, talk bad about people, but...
You know, so it is. It's hard, right? Because you don't want to, like, make people feel bad. But I think sometimes people don't know. And now if they don't know, then that's on them.
Yeah.
Because now it's pretty clear. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's twofold. Like, I have a really good friend of mine who's been a friend for a long time. She listens to the podcast every week. She takes it from this point of view of, I never know what to do, but now I hear what your guests are saying, so I can do better. That to me is almost means more to me sometimes than the people who are like, oh, I feel better after listening to it because I feel the same way or something. Because I do think not giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, but giving people this thought that they don't know what to say, so they say nothing.
Yeah.
I say it all the time, and I think every time I say it, I kind of laugh because Brian at home is always like, oh, Heather, we know. Two things can be true, right?
Yeah.
You will forever live a life where you are going to have a senior year and you're going to have great senior moments and you've got a circle of friends and you are going to figure out a college. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to do the things that you're going to do. And while it may not seem like it now, you're going to have great things, but you will always have that piece of you, right? You're going to get into college and you're going to tell your sister, but you're not going to share it with your sister here on earth. Like, there's countless moments. So you learn how to balance these things, right? You learn how two things are true. You learn how you can be really sad and mad and all of these bad feelings, but you can also still experience joy and happiness. And it takes a while, but it's true, right? Like, you can do that.
Yeah, you brought up a good point because I'm very excited about college, and I obviously don't want to leave my parents, but my mom has mentioned how Ethan felt and, going to school, like, do you have a sibling or not? My high school has obviously been terrible with her being diagnosed in 9th grade, and 10th grade she died, and obviously this is a hard year in general. 11th grade is hard.
Hardest year.
I think about Liv's junior year as her last normal year before things got bad, and then her senior year, next year I'm about to do all the things she didn't get to do. I'm going to walk across the stage she didn't get to cross. I could possibly end up at the college she wanted to go to, and it's going to be very weird, and I'm very excited about college because it will be like a fresh start for me.
It's like a fresh start, and it's like you have the control to share with people what you want to share. And when you are in college and stuff, like, you can dictate how your story unfolds, as opposed to now where it's kind of has been unfolded for you to some degree.
I do want to say I have a sister. It's such a hard conversation. Like, I haven't met a lot of new people. Like, I'm obviously still in high school, but I've met a few people where I've had to say, my sister's, like, gone. And it's such a tough conversation to have. And I can't imagine, like, how Ethan feels. It's just not something you want to talk about.
However you do it is fine. And I say that to you because I say it a little bit to myself. Oh, Sophia, I have so enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.
You are handling the unhandleable. I mean, like, you're handling the hardest stuff, and you are handling it with maturity and with grace and with compassion and with all of the things. And all I guess I would say to you is give yourself grace, right? Lean into it when it's not easy to, because it helps. You'll find the people who you can trust in and talk to, and always reach out to them. And, I'm sure you've got a bigger village than you even know.
Oh, yeah. I have a very big village. And I'm very
And I
thankful.
hope I'm in it for you.
Yes. Through everything. We had the food train, the GoFundMe, you, and all of these people I didn't know came together and helped my family. And I've got a lot of people that I really appreciate and need to send my thanks to later on.
Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Thank you so much for watching.